pickup in that bot lane. So they don't want to give it over to first pick Exertus, and it means that Smiley, we're going to see him on something else, which has historically in the ESL Premiership been Lucian. So we'll see what comes through in the bot lane now that we've lost that Kalista pick.
One thing I'm really interested to see, we didn't see in the first game at all, is Ezreal and Lucian were the top 2 most picked AD carries in both IEM and LCK this week, both with 20 picks, so equally. And that's assuming Kalista was banned, like the vast majority of the time. But we didn't see either of them in the last game, unless I'm just losing my mind.
We saw Kalista last game, and I believe we saw Sivir.
Sivir, that was it.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember for a split second there. I was like, it was literally 10 minutes ago. And I forgot, but yeah. Yeah, so we saw Sivir instead, and Ezreal and Lucian, neither of them have been played. I'm curious to see whether we see those in this game.
Potentially, yeah. Again, Sivir is still strong, you know, played into the right composition. I think Jokerism does favour Sivir quite heavily just because of his history of playing that champion, and I think maybe they've been planning to run a composition because on paper their composition made a lot of sense. They just unfortunately lost their lanes pretty hard, essentially.
Yeah.
Going to be the Corki first pick here, likely going to go towards that mid lane. We do see very little Corki in the bot lane on this current patch, and he is, despite the nerfs, still an incredibly strong mid laner. We've all seen what Corki can do when he can get ahead and completely one-bomb someone with that said phosphorus bomb.
Terrifying as well. The Sheen proc, and if you crit on that Sheen proc, it is just like half of someone's HP. It's insane.
Yeah, so with Nidalee being banned, as well as Elise too, so 2 jungle bans coming out here, Furion is going to go on to Lee Sin, and it's something that we have seen him play if he hasn't had the opportunity to play Nidalee. Still able to get a lot of deep vision down and still able to control the pace of the game quite effectively.
So the question now is, what is the other jungler we see? Because we've got Gragas, Nidalee, and Elise, which are definitely top 3 going to be banned out. Lee Sin's going to be picked up, which is kind of like the counter Gragas pick.
Yeah, I would say either Rumble or Rek'Sai, maybe.
Could it be Graves, though? Could it be Graves?
It could be Graves, actually. I forgot that Graves even exists, to be fair. It's been a while since I've actually seen him. The last person I think I saw play Graves competitively was Maxlaw, because he's been playing that a lot on in Challenger scene. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential pickups here for Nocturnal. Given his history, I imagine Rek'Sai is still a very viable pick. He has played Rumble in the ESL Premiership. We did that in the week that we were in Cologne. He played Rumble in the jungle after we saw it on LCK that morning.
I think that kind of like just was a fad almost.
Yeah, interesting, because I haven't seen that much of it since that week of LCK.
It was weird, because it's not like it got super nerfed or anything. It was just like, oh yeah, let's all play Rumble. No, let's not play Rumble. Change my mind now. I just wanted to give it a go, you know.
I think it you kind of have to realize the sort of stage that Rumble was at. Rumble was played in very quick-paced games. He wanted to group early, make use of that equalizer, very objective-focused. And the way we see people play on this patch because of the death timers is kind of against that style of play. Yeah. People don't like to take risks, and Rumble is a risk. Because behind Rumble sucks. He just sucks. Yeah. Like, he's just a terrible, terrible jungler. The benefit of having Rumble in the jungle is that he can farm very, very easily once he gets that Runic Echo, so he can just clear camps within seconds. Yep. So he still has that backup plan of farming. But you're never, despite what anyone tells you, you're never, ever going to get the same level of gold income in a standard non-snowbally game that you get in the jungle compared to the top lane. So you have to group when he hits his power spikes, otherwise you're going to just start to lag behind and not have the same kind of level of impact. And teams don't generally like to play the style of game that offers itself open to mistakes to be made, things to get out of control. You're looking to snowball. Unfortunately, some team fights go wrong and you get super far behind and you just can't catch up again. You have to be very confident to pick up the Rumble, and it looks like they've locked in the Rek'Sai.
Yeah, so Rek'Sai, as you predicted, going to be locked in, as well as a Poppy. And we've got a Twisted Fate Ezreal locked in as well on the side of Manalite. So very kind of pokey sort of composition, but as well, typically when you lock in that Ezreal, you're kind of saying, we want to play for the later stages of the game. You don't really kind of activate, I guess, until like 20, 25 minutes.
You need 2 items on Ezreal to be useful whatsoever, so you are basically saying, we're going to wait. I have seen some Ezreals go back to the old Triforce build when you're looking to be more auto-attack dependent. Can work, maybe. I think against Poppy, it's not a bad idea to go Triforce Ezreal, just because you need to be a little bit more auto-attack dependent against the Poppy, because you're just not going to do the damage that you need to do with your Mystic shots.
Yeah.
I am kind of interested here. They picked up the Braum, and now they're going towards what looks like a kind of pokey composition, with the sense that you've got the Ezreal and the Twisted Fate. So you've picked up the counter to a poke composition, and now you're going a poke composition. I kind of like it. You've also got the 1-3-1 potential here. A lot of disengage in the form of Ezreal when he has that Frozen Gauntlet, and the disengage from the Haddo, and the disengage from the kick from Furion. So you've got a very decent 1-3-1 here.
They're going to be very difficult to start a team fight with. Like, how do you honestly lock any of that down?
You're relying on either Corki with a special delivery or a hook to make your engage here, because, you know, unless you're getting a flank, both Rek'Sai and Poppy are just too telegraphed, especially against this sort of heavy mobility, high disengage 3 that you've got in the form of Lee Sin, Ezreal, and Braum. And with the double teleport, you're kind of expecting this to move into a 1-3-1. It really depends whether Special will consistently be able to duel Larssen throughout the game. And you've got to remember that should Special move into a side lane to deal with Larssen when he eventually goes for the split push, Larssen could just back off and try and make a play on the map with both his teleport and his ultimate. So I think Exertus are going to have to play this very, very carefully, because they don't want to get stuck into this position where they're trying to force fights against the 3 in the mid lane and just be unable to, while the side lanes get a lot of objectives. So we'll have to see how this plays out. And again, Larssen will struggle in lane versus Corki. It's probably why we're seeing the teleport picked up by him as well.
So the next thing I kind of want to bring the conversation around to is these junglers. Now, we haven't seen Rek'Sai in a little while. Rek'Sai's very much kind of been falling out of the meta somewhat. Obviously, we've got 3 jungle bans coming in, which is why we're going to see this. But Rek'Sai Lee Sin is a matchup that we used to see fairly often. It used to be...
there was the flavor matchup that you generally tended to...
Maybe like 3 or 4 months ago.
Kind of interestingly against the grain, I suppose. We've actually seen a lot of Rek'Sai in the UK Premiership so far. TCA favour Rek'Sai pretty heavily.
Yeah, PJ Cesar played it pretty much every game.
And I'm pretty sure his replacement also played it. Because I saw a lot of those.
I can't remember all of the picks off the top of my head.
I can't remember the name, but I know that's the guy that came in to replace PJ Cesar also played Rek'Sai. So it has been something that we have seen in the UK Premiership. And Nocturnal Plex, before Rek'Sai kind of fell out, was a big Rek'Sai player. He played a lot of that champion, so he's pretty well versed in the sort of roaming potential and the ganking patterns that Rek'Sai can put onto the map. She's a very elusive champion. She can obviously make those kind of top lane ganks where you can move behind your opponent. Less effective now that they are on the blue side, but it can still happen. She can still be aggressive with the warding as well, which I know that Nocturnal Plex likes to do because they can make plays. And actually, when you look at the styles of Furion and Nocturnal Plex, both of them play a very similar style of jungle. They both like to control vision. They both like to be aggressive and make plays. That's the kind of style of jungler you're going to see from these 2 players. So I think that's going to be a big matchup here. Yeah,
I definitely think it will be too. And I mean, let's take a look across the board. Do you think this is a kind of game where we're going to see any sort of lane swap shenanigans? Because you've got the Lucian Thresh, which is historically a very, very dominant lane. I mean, both of those champions came out relatively close to each other, and ever since that's always been like a pocket lane for a lot of duos to kind of just fall back on. Obviously, kind of the wife steal lane.
Yeah.
They're going to go up against Ezreal and Braum. Now, we've already talked about how Ezreal is very much a late game AD carry. Do you think they maybe will struggle in lane here, or do you think Braum is enough to counteract that?
Braum pretty much keeps most AD carries safe. I don't think you're really going to be looking for a lane swap here. Mainly because all of the lanes, I mean, at least Mana Light won't be looking for a lane swap, because if you lane swap, you reduce the efficacy of Twisted Fate, and you also you're taking away a favourable matchup in the top lane, which can be even sometimes more important. You've got Rifty on Trundle, does pretty well against Poppy in the early portions. So I don't think it'll be Mana Light searching for the lane swap. If we do see a lane swap, it will come from the side of Exertus. You look at Exertus' lineup; they've got a very skirmish heavy team. You've got Corki, Lucian, Rek'Sai. They just love to fight around objectives. They're going to want to be spiking in that mid game. Once you've picked up 2 items, 1.5 items on mid lane or an AD carry, they'll be looking to fight consistently from the get-go. Whereas you're not going to be looking to have that from Mana Light. Mana Light don't want to fight. You know, they are not going to win fights in any way, shape or form. So they're going to want to tail this one back. They're going to want to make sure that the game pace is slowed down, and then they can move into that 1-3-1.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And I tell you what, we are ready to head on to Summoner's Rift for our second game of the day. It is going to be Manolite up against Exertus Esports, and we'll see who's going to be able to take this one and who's going to be able to, or I suppose whether or not Exertus are going to be able to fight for that first or second position on the table. Let's remember, Exertus are currently 2-1 in the standings, and we have Manolite at 3-0. If Exertus win this game, they tie things with Manolite.
Exactly. They get themselves to second position, where it just really leaves that outlier of Renegades way up at the top, and then it'll be really Exertus and Manolite making sure that their results are consistent throughout the next few weeks to secure themselves that top 4 spot. I believe Renegades now, having won that, have secured themselves a top 4 spot, I believe. They should now
have, the Renegades are through to playoffs now.
Yeah, they're through to playoffs regardless. So congratulations, Renegades. We'll see you in those playoff stages. But, you know, these two teams at Manolite will be wanting to do the same here. Manolite will be wanting to win to secure themselves that spot in the top 4.
Yeah.
Exertus are going to want to make sure that they keep their chances alive. And this is even if they lose this, they're not necessarily, obviously, nowhere near out of the running. But winning this gives them such a huge boost towards securing that playoff spot.
Yeah, Exertus is essentially 2 wins away from securing their spot. And obviously, as you say, they're going to be wanting to make this game one of those wins. And I think the key thing as well isn't necessarily just about locking in that playoff spot. A little bit of a cheeky invade coming out here from Manolite. Very late invade as well.
This is really interesting because it was the lane swap that was sought by Exertus. And now it's going to be a huge...
Oh, Tundra is going to be slowed. That's going to be Furion following up on his Sonic Wave, but they don't quite manage to find that Thresh. And it looks like Rifty and Furion are going to be starting things off in their opponent's jungle. Plex going to be less than happy about this situation.
So both teams opted for a lane swap here. Now, Exertus definitely...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Exertus definitely potentially looking for this one here because they were trying to potentially, I guess, move the Poppy away from that matchup, and then they also knew that they could be fairly dominant in a 2 versus 1 situation, which very rarely happens at this sort of meta. You don't ever see 2 versus 1s because the junglers move around with their top laner. But now we've got a complete reversal in terms of classic lane matchups where you'll see your top lane in the bot lane and your bot lane in the top lane. So going forward, we may refer to the AD carry and support as the bot lane, but they are in fact in that top lane.
We'll just assume that they are the bottom lane, but we are going to see Rifty, as you say, teleport very early on down into that top/bottom lane. I immediately, after you said that, managed to mess it up, but he's going to be trying to catch up on farm to that Poppy. So a decent start here for Zergoth, who has renamed himself to Zerg. I might just go with Zer at this point, I'm not even sure, but names seem to change far too often in the UK scene for my liking, but we're going to see Furion now leaving that jungle. Has managed to get 2 levels off the back of that. Yeah,
and this isn't too bad realistically for Manolite at this point in time because they have the classic lane matchup but just reversed. So this still means that Twisted Fate can have an impact once he turns 6. It just means he'll be likely going towards the top lane instead of that very usual bot lane that we see from him. And you're just going to see lane slowly push, and you're not going to see early turrets again because lane swap hasn't occurred here, so we're not going to see very early turrets go down. It's just going to be pretty standard across the board, and I'm excited to see this because Rifty should be able to do very well in this bot lane versus Goth.
I'm very curious in this game to see how Exertus deal with Larson, because Larson, generally speaking in these games, has been just going off. He's been doing some serious work for Manolite, and it feels like if he's not the direct carry in every game, then he's at very least, going 8-2 or something, and just picking up kills off the back of a carry. But he's never had a bad score so far. He definitely feels like a target that could be a focus target, but Rifty's actually been caught down in this bottom lane. Is Trundle though, so I'm going to be able to just walk away.
Smiley just took huge amounts of damage from Gakis on this toaster. And Furion is...
Gakis on this toaster. On the Lucian,
maybe. On the Lucian, sorry, yeah, the Lucian is... sorry, I just forced a habit.
I mean, like, not everyone can afford a great PC like you, Excalibur. Sorry if he's going to toast it. Cyberbullying going on in the UK Premiership, but Furion's been waiting here for a little while now. He doesn't want to wait too long, but they've been hooked onto Smiley. Are they going to turn this into anything? The bait has come out, but can they turn this into a kill? Tundra is going to be exhausted. Sonic Wave lands, but they can't go
flash from Furion?
I don't know.
That flash from Furion was so crazy. They hadn't even landed concussive blows on the Tundra. I'm assuming that he flashed attempting to proc that concussive blows, and he was stood in that top lane for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
The Tundra must have known something was going on because he did not follow up on the very good hook onto Smiley. Smiley didn't even try and dodge it either.
I think it was a matter of where they were positioned in the lane and stuff. It kind of was like, hey, we want to gank you almost. I think Tundra was well aware of the situation.
Yeah, and also the fact that Smiley didn't even try to dodge the hook, so he probably thought, wait a second, something's a little bit funny about this situation.
Yeah.
Zergoth slowly being pushed in here by Rifty, who didn't burn his flash from that very timely Nocturnal Plex gank in that bot lane. He's also managed to heal himself back up to full here with that Corrupting Potion. Also the fact that
his Trundle.
Every minion that dies around him grants him a portion of health, and that's obviously doubled or increased by a certain percentage when he's on that frozen domain as well.
Yeah, the Trundle passive is terrifyingly good to sustain. It's going to keep you in lane basically forever. I think that the thing is that's so great about it is it's not even a matter of you needing to last it. So even if you're on 10 HP and being zoned away, you can just stand near enough to get XP and you're going to get healed every time one of those minions dies. So it's just so easy to get yourself back up to full HP and get back into the lane.
For sure. Plex now heading towards this mid lane, going to help clear and push things out. This has been fairly quiet though, despite a few ganks here and there. Nothing major seems to have started to happen for either of these sides, and you're just going to see them continue to try and force these 2 versus 2s and 1 versus 1s. So this could be a slightly slower game than we've seen from previous ESL Premiership games between these teams. And Manlight, for instance, are very used to playing a almost Renegade style game where they have quick-paced games, they win their lanes, they end up moving and winning their games very quickly. But as it stands, things are going to start to slow down.
I mean, that's typically how it is when you get kind of the top teams against each other. You typically see a slower start to the game because nobody wants to be the first one to make that mistake. One thing I have noticed in this game is Larssen is doing a very good job to stay even in this lane. I mean, this is Twisted Fate versus Corki. That is not a very nice lane for Twisted Fate.
It's incredibly tough for Twisted Fate, and I've got to say, Larssen taking low a few times, but did teleport back to lane. But he, again, like you said, he has stayed very even and is now even starting to pull ahead in this mid lane. If I'm completely honest, this slower style of game is going to suit Manlight to a T. You know, they want to try and extend this game out because they want to hit those power spikes later on with the 2 items on Smiley. They want to make sure that at least that Rod of Ages is on Twisted Fate before he starts to do anything meaningful. And also the fact that no towers are down. So these outer tier 1 towers, none of them have gone down yet. That's going to make Twisted Fate far more effective when he's looking to affect the map, because there is going to be a limited area in which he can do so, because he knows that most people are going to now be sitting between these 2 tier turrets.
Smiley's been caught up and ignited. We're going to see Gakis jumping for that, but Hado blocking so much damage with that Unbreakable is going to save his AD carry's life. Not a single summoner burn.
And actually Smiley is what a pretty difficult lane matchup for him in the early game. And to be honest, Ezreal has pretty difficult lane matchups across the board. Tundra
is going to get stunned up in a second if he's not careful. Gakis tanking tower. Tundra now the only one here, but Plex is jumping in as the teleports are channeled on through, and suddenly we're in a massive team fight. Plex is going to get stunned up and taken down for first blood. Zergoth is going to be locked up as well. A beautiful ultimate. Is it going to be enough though? Smiley flashes forward and kills himself for the kill. He's going to get traded back by... He does. Well, it's true. Now like the flash gold card is going to land onto Gakis. Sonic Wave comes out from Furia, but he's so low. Double kill now heads onto Special. Gakis trying to finish off with the damage, but they just don't quite have enough. Hado's so low. One more rocket is not quite there. He needs to find that target. Larssen doing a good job of blocking these so far. And all in all, it's a 2 for 2.
That looked awful for Exertus from that dive going through, because just the amount of reactions that came through from Manlight, obviously with the Twisted Fate and the teleport from Rifty, meant that they were easily able to maneuver themselves up to that top lane. But I'm going to be honest, Manlight overstayed. They stayed far too long, and then they got caught out by the burst damage coming out from Special. Giving 2 kills to a Corki on a mid-game centered team is just not what you want to be doing. That could have gone so much better for Manlight, but they just pushed themselves a little bit too far. They stretched the boundaries a little bit too much after having turned around a fight that was obviously well in their favor. Plex got caught way behind the turret. Zergoth was also a little bit out of position. Special just single-handedly turned that around with the burst damage that Corki can put out at this stage in the game.
So now the question for me is, how does this affect the game? Because you've got 2 kills in the mid lane from the side of Exertus, but then you've got a kill in the top and a kill in the bot from the side of Manlight. So Which team really has the advantage there? Do you think that the side lane pressure is going to make enough of a difference?
Honestly, I think that at this stage in the game, especially if we're going to see any more objectives fought over, this is well in favour of Exertus. They need to make use of this Corki, though, because he is going to be that real key to winning the game for Exertus, because Corki has a huge spike. You know, between 15 and 30 minutes, Corki is in his, you know, playing ground, I suppose, in the sense that he finishes that Triforce, and then he can just look to fight consistently. It's such a huge power spike for him. Yeah. So I mean, I realistically think that Exertus definitely hold the key here. They just need to make. They just need to make sure that.
Yeah, so I mean,
sorry, I was getting some wonderful instructions. I was being harassed by my production. It was just really hard to think.
Let's take a look at the items that we've got coming out on the board. We've got a BF sword in the hands of Gakis, as well as that Warhammer. We've got a Sheen and a. We're not actually seeing any calls coming out from the AD carry so far, which is interesting to me because that's something, especially on Ezreal, we've seen coming out a lot.
Yeah, culls have been fairly popular across a lot of AD carries, especially those that are just looking to move towards the later stages of the game because they know if they're just trying to farm.
I'm very surprised to see Lucian not culling. But
Tumbleweed.
I enjoyed that pun thoroughly.
I did.
I don't mind if anyone else enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and that's all that counts.
Yeah, top keck munch.
You're welcome. Continue analysing.
I can't remember what I was talking about.
Cole.
Just the Cole. So Cole, it's become one of those items that we've seen actually across a multitude of champions, and Zergoth now starting to do some real damage to Rifty here. Rifty going to start to back away, but it's been something that we've seen across a multitude of champions. You know, you just know that you probably aren't going to be looking to skirmish in the early game, so you just wait until you have that cull and you stack it up to the 100 stacks, and you just basically get a load of free gold, which is very useful.
Yeah,
Tundra,
here we go. Tundra is going to get kicked straight on back by Furion, and he will be taken out in just a couple of seconds. Hado blocking the entire culling from Gakis there with the Unbreakable. Gakis maybe looking to turn that into something. Smiley does still have his heal available, so Gakis does need to...
Oh, that was so close.
Pearson Light nearly picks up the kill, but can't quite finish it off.
Yeah, so good exploit by Furion. He knew that Tundra had burnt his flash in that last little team fight, so knew it was an easy kill to move on to Tundra and make that kick happen. So, again, nice pressure by Furion in the jungle. He's been slightly more effective than Nocturnal Plex, I guess. He's only been involved in one more kill, and like I said, this has been a pretty slow game by ESL Premiership
we've
standards.
Basically had two fights. We've had that massive team fight that came out of nowhere in the top lane, and then we've had that guy.
But in terms of like individual skirmishes in the lanes, everything's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think one thing we haven't really mentioned, because it's not really been a whole lot to mention, is CS. These lanes seem a lot more even than a lot of the games that we've had in the
I think
season.
this just reflects on how even the teams are in terms of its skill level. I mean, you talk about where you expect these two teams to land in the Premiership at the end of the season, and everyone probably says it's a mix between Exertus and Manlight for that second and third spot.
Yeah.
And you're sort of seeing it right here. These guys are toe and toe. There is a 1k gold lead for Manlight at this point in time, but that means very little in the grand scheme of things. It looks like Furion is also trying to apply pressure to top lane. He's going to just stick around. He does like to stick around in these lanes for longer than I think Plex does. Plex is far more looking to...
I was going to say, Plex is more than happy for him to stick around, because in the meantime, he's like a kid in a candy shop in Furion's jungle, just stealing away whatever he wants. Yeah,
but Furion's still managing to maintain his CS lead. So, you know, despite the great pressure that we've seen from Furion, he's still able to keep up in farm as well.
Yeah.
So Plex, I think, has been doing far more in vision, though. You can see the vision for the side of Exertus.
That's what I was about to say,
It's loads and loads of vision, and usually we see that Furion doing that kind of thing, but you can't do everything at once in the top lane. Rifty and Zergoth. Rifty very low, but Zergoth, no mana, afraid to try and trade here with Rifty. They try and get a hook here. Tundra not going to follow that up. True Shot Barrage also wards off that push onto the turret.
It certainly does, and that is going to mean that they have to back off, at least for now, and there's a ward in the middle of the lane, so they know exactly where Plex is. I think they just watched him walk into that bush, so I don't think they're going to be
Special can
too
afford his
worried about
Triforce now,
one.
so...
Oh, Smiley
wow.
gets caught by a very nice hook. Glacial Fissure is going to come out. We do see Lee Sin jump back into the fray as Larson teleports on down. Tundra going to be the next target. If they can land the stun, they should be able to pick him up, and it will be Larson that gets that last hit. Nice little play Off the back of Tundra's hook as well.
Again, when you're playing this team on Manlight, you really just don't want to be looking to make plays, especially if you cannot see Twisted Fate on your map. If you can't see Twisted Fate on your map, don't make a play, because it's so obvious that he's going to try and influence that play for the enemy team in some way. And it was just far too presumptuous from Tundra to go for that play, not realizing that Twisted Fate would immediately move down. Zergoff didn't even bother teleporting because there was going to be zero impact for him in that team fight. So it's just going to mean that another small victory for Manlight from this huge map pressure team. And this is what the difference you're seeing in the Twisted Fate this game. Yes, Candy Floss and Renegades won, but the actual impact that Candy Floss had in the early game was, you know, very next to none. He had a lot more impact in the later game when they were looking to dive Nick on that Rammus, or at least put pressure on turrets. But you're seeing here, this is how your classic Twisted Fate is played. He just influences skirmishes in the bot lane more often than not, and he's having a great impact here for Manlight. 1-0-1, 50% kill participation, but those kill participations have been turning around teamfights quite effectively.
Special going aggressive onto Larson in the mid lane. Does a whole bunch of damage. Isn't quite going to be able to finish off that kill. I say that, flashes for the auto. But there's the smite Sonic Wave out of Furion. Picks up the kill with his Dragon's Rage.
Yeah, again, Furion able to just...
a series of plays right there.
Yeah, a series of plays, but it does mean that bot lane turret can go down to the side of Exertus here, so they're going to get a lot of pressure here. But it actually came out from the lane swap as well. Smiley and Haddo now moving towards that top lane. They're going to put Rifty into a 1-versus-1 matchup in the bot. I imagine Zergoth probably not wanting to go 2-versus-2 in that 2-versus-1 in that bot lane. And they're going to start to pressure this tier 2 turret now of Exertus. Rifty going to back away here.
Oh, actually blocks out Plex there. Nice death sentence. Dark Passage is going to pick him up and get him to safety, but reinforcements have arrived here for Rifty, so he's going to be able to protect this tower, and does manage to get away with it in the end. I was a little bit worried for his health for a second there when Plex arrived, but in the end is going to be just about A-okay. And in the meantime, Zergoth pushing away on this mid lane tower isn't quite going to be able to finish that one off, though. Yeah,
Special's got the package here, so he's going to potentially do a bit of a number on Smiley.
He certainly is, and he's going in onto Smiley. Can he pick up the kill, though? It looks like he might be able to. Smiley has to flash away from that one. Rifty has arrived, though, and he's looking to pick up Special, who is just getting chunked out right there. True Shot Barrage nearly picks up the kill for the likes of Smiley, but I mean, honestly, Special so close to securing that kill. Had he had flash, that would have been a kill, guaranteed.
Yeah, but he also used that Valkyrie aggressive. So what you can do after having the package is you can use your special delivery and then immediately use Valkyrie after. They are two separate cooldowns. Rifty now the target for Zergoth.
Yeah, Zergoth having to, or Zerg. I've not spoken to him before the game, so I don't really know how he wants me to say that, but he's going to be able to get away with that one. Obviously on the Poppy, you're pretty safe, generally speaking. So.
Yeah, especially against the Braum as well. There's no way that Braum can aggressively jump in with that stand behind me because of that steadfast presence. That's such a useful tool against champions like that. It's really useful against Lee Sin and very useful against Braum as well. So we'll have to see how much that comes into play in the skirmishes involving Zergoth and Furion, because he can probably effectively stop the insects and you know, anything that Lee Sin tries to do using flashy ward plays.
Oof,
so close.
That nearly went across the last. Thing is, though, I mean, Rift Arrow. Wait, no, it denies the buff, doesn't it? Actually,
it does. Yeah, it denies the buff.
I keep on thinking because it goes on the ground. I already know that only the team that kills the Herald can pick it up, but it always feels like that shouldn't be the case almost.
No, I agree, because
by the way, it drops on the ground.
It drops on the ground, but that's just for you to select which member of your team it goes on to. But they're going to use it effectively with a 5-man or 4-man push. Larson now going toe-to-toe with Special here. Zergoth
is going to get locked up as well, and as you say, that Special is going to be able to pick up one kill, but immediately gets answered for. Smiley grabs another kill for himself. 3-1-3 on the Ezreal right now. This tower starting to get fairly low, and we might just have a fight for the life of the tower. Obviously, those minions are going to do a little bit extra damage, but they're not going to be any tankier with that Rift Herald buff, so should be able to clear that away. And in the end, it looks like they're not wanting to fight this one just yet. Maybe both teams are a little bit nervous about going for that without their mid laners. However, Larson does have teleport, and he is Twisted Fate, so
And he's got 2 items now. This is a pretty big spike for Larson. He's picked up that Lichbane. That does spell to me that he's likely wanting to go into the split push Twisted Fate, having gone that... oh, they're going aggressive here.
Yeah, teleport is going to come out. That's one player just knocked out of the map by Zergoth, but he's going to be locked up by the stun coming out from the Braum, and there is a kill coming across. 4th one for Smiley now, who is getting a little bit out of control. Culling Lanslow as well as a death sentence.
Oh, Tundra's on it!
Could be in trouble. Goes straight on into the fight, and that's Smiley going down. Gakis, though, is being chased out by Rifty. Beautiful pillar, denies the relentless pursuit, and that is going to be able to get him to safety. Hado going to be able to block a little bit of damage, but it's not enough, and he ends up going down. Special has joined the fight now, trying to finish players off, and all in all, it's a 3 for 2 in the end.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a gold advantage now, moving over to the side of Manolite. They're just starting to eke ahead here. They've, again, using that Twisted Fate perfectly. He's just basically coming through, using his ultimate as that base swing tool that you see in the team fights, and able to get to these fights after going for a 1-for-1 with Special in that mid lane. Just getting to these fights far more quickly than Special is able to react to, and that's why, you know, Special went for that cleanse. Maybe would have been better off with the teleport to try and you know, affect the map. It just does mean he kind of loses kill pressure in lane, but I guess you're eventually going to lose out to his just because of how much quick map pressure the Manolite team can exert.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see whether they can continue to exert that pressure, because they're only 2,500 gold ahead right now. We're 20 minutes into the game, so it's not really the greatest of leads we've ever seen. But I think the key thing is you've got Twisted Fate and Ezreal on this composition. So
the later this goes, the better it is, you know. And Twisted Fate's now hitting towards 3 items. Ezreal is doing the same. You kind of past the point where these guys aren't a strong set of team members, and now they're hitting those item spikes. This is pretty big for Twisted Fate. Furion going aggressive.
Beautiful
dear.
kick onto Gakis. That's an easy kill coming through from Manolite, and an easy mid lane tower as well. Zergi is going to be able to knock one player away, but it's not going to be enough in the end. This tower will go down. And I'll be interested to see what Manolite do with this one, whether they go to Dragon, whether they look to try and turn this into pressure onto other objectives. Looks like Dragon is going to be the call here.
I've got to be honest, I feel like Manolite are playing Exerters at their own game. You know, Exerters should be looking to group early with this Corki and look for skirmishes, but Corki is off in the side lanes pushing by himself, and then the rest of Manolite are just grouping. They were probably looking for 1-3-1, but that's just not happening at this point in time because they don't need to. They're winning these smaller skirmishes just because Exerters are all over the map right now, unable to use the Corki to his maximum efficiency. And whenever you are seeing Corki fight, he's fighting by himself and then getting picked off by the rest of Manolite.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, it's certainly paying off for Manolite. 3,000 gold lead now for them. So they've managed to get... I mean, that gold lead increase really was minimal, considering what they took, a kill and a tower off the back of that.
Look at Rifty as well. He's 304. He's had a huge impact in terms of kills across the game. He's hitting huge item spikes too. He's nearly hit that frozen gauntlet on that Trundle, so he's going to be looking to be a huge damage threat as well as a pretty tanky guy in the midst of... You're chuckling, but...
It was just the way you said, as well as a pretty tanky guy.
Yeah, I mean, he will be a pretty tanky guy. Not necessarily the same level of tank that Poppy's putting out, but he's still going to be a struggle to deal with just with that ultimate, you know. Once he pops the ultimate, he will have the extra resistances that he needs, but will be a huge damage threat as well. So, yeah, I mean, Rifty's going to start to become a problem, because I don't think that Zergoth will be able to split push against him.
No, I don't think he will either. And I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but that's one of the things about Trundle as well, especially when you're 304. But Trundle in general against these tanks just is always going to be difficult to deal with, because especially back when you used to go Blade of the Rune King, and just it was so hard for any tank to be in lane against him later on in the game once he had a couple of items. And it's going to be a similar scenario just because he has those kills and because of the way his ultimate works. But we'll see whether that's going to be the case, and whether they choose to put Zergoth in a split push role, or whether they look to try and force some fights. Because honestly, I feel like right now, if you're Exertus, you want to be looking to try and force something, because Lucian and Corki, they don't last forever.
No, for sure. That's kind of what we said right at the start of this game. Lucian and Corki, they spike very heavily in the mid game. You want to be fighting with Corki as much as physically possible. At the moment, Special's been picking off solo kills, but you need to be utilising him in a skirmish or a teamfight situation to make best use of his damage, and that's just not happened for Exertus so far. They've been looking to push lanes, led for Corki by himself. They've been getting caught off by the map rotation potential of the side of Larson and the Manlight squad. And as I say that,
gets a gold card, and actually teleport going to be channeled on in here. It's going to be Rifty joining the fray, but immediately just knocked back to Demacia. Here we go, Smiley. Zergoth actually jumping in onto Haddo. Smiley has gone down in the meantime. That was picked up by Tundra. Haddo now incredibly low on HP. The death sentence is going to land, and it is literally going to be that. Picks up the kill. And that is 2-0 in favor of Exertus. We said they need to force fights, and force fights they do.
Again, I kind of think that was more of a mistake on Manolight's part, though. I have no idea what Smiley was doing, but he basically dove in 2 versus 1 to Tundra and Gakis, not respecting the fact that Tundra could land a hook, and not respecting the damage that Gakis can put out on Lucian with 2 items. I know he's got an item advantage on Lucian. He's got an entire item up here on Gakis, but he just, I don't know, he just dove straight in. And Tundra hooked him and he went down, and that basically sealed the deal for Manlight, because realistically, once Smiley gets taken down, they don't have a lot of consistent sustain damage because Larson has to wait for those cooldowns to come up to get his rotations off. So they just won't be able to win without, you know, Smiley being alive. So once Smiley basically killed himself there, he single-handedly almost lost the fight for Manlight.
Yeah, it's always going to be difficult when the player that has half of your team's kills themselves.
I can imagine.
That's never going to be,
it's never going to be a
fun
good
scenario for you, but. Here we go, Haddo going to be clearing away some vision in the mid lane. And so far across the board, we are starting to see some star players really show right now, because take a look at Special. 6-3 on this Corki. He is really terrifying at this point in the game. And again, as you say, if Smiley can't survive these fights, if he does get picked off like we saw in that game, in that team fight, then Manalight are in a lot of trouble. They do still have a small gold lead here, but they have to be aware that it is only a small gold lead. And but it won't take much for Exertus then to snowball into inhibitors.
Look at Smiley now. He's moving towards the top lane. He's going away from the pack. They aren't going to force skirmishes while Smiley is they're pushing Special's pushing the top lane, because all that Manlight are going to do is they're either going to push as a 5. They've got a lot of tower pushing potential with this Ezreal and this Twisted Fate with the Lich Bane. And even if Smiley pushes up by himself, he's just going to face the wave clear of Twisted Fate as well. I mean, Twisted Fate doesn't necessarily... I mean, look at the damage as well. Twisted Fate doesn't need to get into a skirmish with Specials. I just don't feel like Special being in a split push here is a good thing. I know he's strong. I know that he can beat most people 1v1, but that's not where Corki's strengths lie. He's just very good at skirmishing and very good at team fighting while he's ahead.
They absolutely are. And speaking of team fighting, it looks like action might be about to kick off. Tundra lands a hook onto Haddo. The Unbreakable is going to keep him alive for a long time, but Zergoth enters the fight. Haddo, the first one to drop here, but Zergoth cannot survive the damage, and he goes down to both of the carries there. Larson ends up picking up the kill in the end. In the meantime, Furion, behind enemy lines, maybe waiting to try and look for a kick. In fact, he did use his kick during the fight.
He used it, and Gakis immediately flashed when he saw Furion appear behind the tower, because he knew that it was going to be a repeat of that mid-lane tier 1 tower scenario. He had jumped straight out and actually ended up Furion kicking Tundra away just to make sure that he wasn't caught in a scary situation behind enemy lines. Tundra's been pretty solid with these hooks so far, though. He's definitely started to set up some plays. Zergoth just not tanky enough right now to deal with the damage coming out from this Ezreal and Twisted Fate on the back line. I don't think that's going to be something that he's going to catch up to easily, given his score in CS. So he's going to have to look to start to impact team fights another way. He can't sit there and soak damage. He doesn't survive very long. Tundra, though.
Tundra might have found himself caught out this time. He's going to be going down to Smiley. Takes a huge chunk out of Special as well, and will be able to secure that second tier mid tower. Looks like Zergoth may be looking for the fight to continue, though, as Haddo enters the fray as well. What was that? It blocks so much damage, and look at the kick out of Furion. So many knockups, and now it's going to be Plex. The last man remaining will fall. Larson teleports in, but he's a little bit too late. Double kill comes over to Smiley. And this should be an inhibitor tower. Oh, no, they don't have any minions. Maybe they go for Baron instead.
It's going to be a free Baron if they go for it, though. I am so confused as to what Nocturnal Plex was doing.
Was that a kick out of Furion?
That was a beautiful kick out of Furion. It was a 3-man knock-up from a singular kick. But
I saw it. I thought I saw it. I was like, I'm sure that's not cooldown, but it looked like it.
I have no idea what Nocturnal Plex thought he was going to do there. He's like, oh, I'm really healthy. I know you guys are below 50% HP, but hey, I can get a 5-man knock-up. And yes, he got a 5-man knock-up, but there just wasn't the damage to follow up on. There was quite low mana on Gakis, quite low mana on the Special. Even as a potentially 3-item Corki, you're not going to burst 5 members down of the enemy team in one go. So
that's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, then the kick came out from Furion, and he just basically single-handedly sealed the fight there. He kicked Nocturnal Plex, who has quite high health values at this point in time, so will do a lot of damage to his team if he lands into them. And there you saw, they got completely wiped off the map, and all through that Furion kick, but also due to that completely unnecessary engage coming out from Nocturnal Plex. They were just not in a situation where that was a play that needed to be made.
No, absolutely not. And here we go. Dragon going to be started off by Manalite. So Manalite starting to really take control of this game at this stage. 6,000 gold lead for them, 16 kills to 9. And that's their second Dragon of the game as well, locked in. 29 minutes in and we only see 2 Dragons. So you can really see that the focus has been on a very much extended laning phase. For this game.
And that was why the double lane swap suited Manalite far more, because the pace of the game just slows down when you have a normal lane matchup. Unless one lane goes absolutely off the chain and dominates their lane like in solo queue, laning phases is just so extended, and that's really what has suited the Manalite team right now, because they've just allowed the Ezreal to build up his gold and build up his need for those late game items. Twisted Fate has had an impact across the map. You see his score is far more kill participation heavy than we saw Candy Floss, because Candy Floss just wasn't able to do much in the early portion of the game because of the lane swaps. So, you know, it's just been a real tough situation for Exertus. And again, Hado getting caught out here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's really the target they want to go on, though. Hado's Unbreakables have blocked so much damage across this game. Tundra looking for the death sentence onto Smiley, but he's wise to the tricks at this point in the game and managing to dodge away from that one. But the Baron is going to slowly but surely start to chunk out this tower. There's a siege cannon just poking away slowly but surely, and 1 or 2 more auto attacks will finally finish that one off as soon as someone can walk near. But Zergoth is looking for a way in to start this fight, and honestly, the tower is not feeling healthy. Maybe this is an opportunity for Manalite to start a tower dive, to try and turn this into another fight.
Rifty's coming round though, so this could be what is going to happen here.
Here we go, Rifty jumping on in, and that is going to be the tower going down. Do they turn this into a fight or just back away? They managed to get a knockback on someone. Hado going to be the next target. The knock-up, so there, Smiley is getting very low, and he does go down. In fact, it's a kill for Special. Larson manages to trade it straight back across onto Tundra there, though, and Zergoth will finally go down. So it's 2 for 3 so far. Special and Gakis both managing to survive. Fury and just completely whips his Sonic Wave there.
Yeah, but Rifty is such a monster on this Trundle right now. He's able to just walk through these teamfights. He is performing the job that Poppy should be performing.
Look at that tower.
But yeah, and they're just going to melt it down. He is performing the job that Poppy should be performing at this point in stage. He's just unable to be taken down easily by the enemy team. And this is what I said about the lineup from Exertus. They have a very mid-game centered teamfight team. They want to fight around objectives. They want to skirmish. The time is gone now. That is what is way past the deadline for making the Corki work as effectively as it could do. And now you're heading towards that late game stage where the Manalite team is just going to win time and time again. But we haven't seen the 1-3-1 from Manalite, which is something that I expected to see given their summoner spells and the champions that they picked. But they haven't really needed to, because they've just been winning team fights over and over again. So why would you go for a split push when you can just force the team fights which you're winning? And I guess...
just quickly, while it still exists, look at the CS from Manalite. Perfectly round numbers.
Well,
it's beautiful.
Except for Furio. No.
Well, it was.
Oh, well, it was.
That's why I interrupted you. Usually I wouldn't interrupt you, but that was just
that's absolutely fine. You know, I also like to see whole numbers munched. It's a fetish of mine also.
It's round numbers, not whole numbers. There's no decimals in CS, mate.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
L2 maths.
Anyway,
moving on.
What I was saying, it looks fairly grim. Yeah, Furion steals away. He's going to force a teleport coming up from Zergoth here. That was an interesting teleport. That was
very short-range teleport. They're going on to Hado. Do get the knock-up here. I'm not sure Hado was really worth that engage, though, but here we go. Rifty teleports in as well. Zergoth going to just get chunked out here. Look at the damage coming out from Smiley. He will be able to get himself away. Furion is just going to get onto Plex. He does use the kick in the end. It's just going to secure that jungler for themselves. And honestly, this is starting to feel unwinnable right now for one of the players. Larson coming on in. And take a look at this. The fight is going the way of Manalite. Special going to be taken down as well. There is a hook onto Smiley from Tundra, but it's nowhere near enough. Smiley grabs himself his 9th kill of the game, and he is tanking tower, but I'm not sure he cares all that much. And now they can head towards this mid lane or the top lane. They can pick whatever lane they like at this stage.
Yeah, and like I said, this is just now where they don't need to split push. They win team fights. They've been winning team fights really, realistically, way earlier than they probably should have been winning team fights. And this should just be an easy sort of ceiling of the game here for Manolite as they push towards these Nexus turrets. Nocturnal Plex up in 4 seconds. I don't know if Zergoth's going to be able to defend this by himself. Nope, he'll get taken down very quickly.
That'll be a no then.
That'll be a no.
That one.
And Manolite are going to very easily seal the game out at 33 minutes.
Yeah, so there we have it. Manolite versus Exertis Esports. The game is going to go the way of Manolite. And honestly, very, very close between the two teams for a good portion of the game.
20 minutes, 25 minutes for sure.
And then Manolite suddenly